Okay, so they give us a function, and they've already restricted the domain for us, and we're going to find the inverse. So we're going to look at this first one. Now, just looking at the function, so just looking at this part, that is a parabola, right? And it's shifted 4 units to the right. Okay, so there's a transformation. Here we are at 4, and there's going to be a parabola shape, something like that. Okay, so the first restriction here says x is greater than or equal to 4. So we're not going to use this part. We're just going to use this part. Okay, and this would be on part A. Okay? All right, so keep that in mind. We're going to find the inverse by writing it. Y equals x minus 4 squared. Take the square root of both sides. Oh, nope. Sorry. Back up. I forgot to switch the x and y. I was all excited. Okay. Switch the x and y. Okay. Take the square root of both sides now. Go ahead and add the 4 over. I would write it this way. The book puts the 4 in front, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, so we're almost done. We get to write the inverse notation in a minute. Okay, here's what we have to say. When we took the square root of both sides, we introduced this square root sign, right? And we put a plus or minus because that's what we've been taught to do. You take the square root of both sides, you got to consider plus and minus. But remember, there's a restriction here. It said it said x is greater than or equal to 4. When you switched the x and y, so right here, when you switched the x and y, we can also switch it on the restriction. So we're saying y has to be greater than or equal to 4. That means that this needs to be greater than or equal to 4. Now you have to decide, do I want the positive square root of x, or do I want the negative square root of x? You only get to have one. Well, if it's going to be greater than 4, and you're adding 4 to it, you're going to need the positive case. So our function is going to say the square root of x plus 4. That will be the inverse. We won't consider the negative square root of x because we need our output to be greater than 4. That restriction comes from when they said x is greater than 4 in the original function. Now we're saying in the inverse then the output has to be greater than 4. Greater than or equal to. Okay. Now we're going to look at the other side. So it's the same function. We can draw the picture again. So it's that parabola at 4. But this time we're going to talk about this side. Now how do I know that? Because the restriction says x is less than or equal to 4. So it's got to be this way. So we're not going to consider this part of the graph. Only the left side of the parabola, I guess. Okay. So we'll write the function y equals x minus 4 squared. We're going to switch x and y. I guess we already did this. You don't have to redo it, but it's okay. We'll just show it to you again. Now, a lot of times I like to think about the restriction right there. When I switched the x and y, I'm changing the restriction to say y is less than or equal to 4. Okay, take the square root of both sides, add the 4, and now we have to decide which case is going to give me less than 4. I need y to be less than or equal to 4. So do I want the positive case or the negative case? Now, I'm going to be taking a number, whatever the square root of x is, it'll be a positive number. So do I want to get a positive plus 4 or do I want a negative plus 4? I need my output to be less than 4, so I need the negative case. So I'm going to write this as f inverse of x equals the opposite of the square root of x plus 4. And then that would be the inverse for that function. Okay? One thing I didn't mention, there is a restriction. This is a square root curve, right? So you know that x has to be greater than or equal to 0 in both these cases. That just is a reminder that there is a restriction on the square root function. You can't take the square root of a negative number. It's not going to be real. So I just throw that in. It's understood because we've had square root functions before, but there is a restriction on the domain for those inverses.